All right, we had a brief break. And now we have another speaker who coincidentally has been on my podcast. If you're not subscribed, you should. His name is Edan Yago. Recently, he became even more famous than he previously was for verifying the first ZK proof on Bitcoin, ZK rollup, and much more. ZK proof, not a rollup yet. And right now he's working on BitcoinOS. If you heard the name Edan Yago previously, he was mostly associated with Sovryn and the idea of building DeFi on Rootstock, which is a sidechain on Bitcoin. But as he said on my podcast, now he considers sidechains to be obsolete, and he's more focused on rollups. So welcome to the stage, Edan.
Thank you very much.
Take the floor.
My mic's on. We stand on the precipice of a period of unprecedented peace, freedom, and prosperity. And you don't need to do a damn thing. Bitcoin doesn't need to be anything or do anything. It just needs to exist. And all you need to do is buy Bitcoin and hodl Bitcoin. Because let me tell you what's about to happen. Let me tell you what is inevitable. What is inevitable is that governments are going to continue to print cash. They're going to continue to generate fiat. They're going to continue to be more indebted than they can possibly ever pay back. And as this happens, as more and more fiat printer goes vroom, the price of everything in comparison to Bitcoin is going to fall. And the price of Bitcoin in comparison is going to rise until eventually the only thing of any value is going to be BTC. And you, who have been wisely hodling Bitcoin, will be able to buy anything you want in a period of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and freedom. And better than that, the no-coiners who told you you were wrong, they will be forced to come crawling on their hands and knees just to tell you that you were right. All along, you were smarter than them, and to beg for your generosity and mercy, merely so that they can eat a small something in this new era of unprecedented prosperity. Please like and subscribe to my Bitcoin-only podcast, where every single week I will interview one of the same 6 or 7 guests who will tell you exactly this story, and we will also give you important tips on how you should never eat vegetables and buy plenty of guns in order to prepare for a period of unprecedented peace, freedom, and prosperity. When you say it like that, it sounds kind of dumb. And yet, for years and years and years, I've been going to conferences just like this and hearing this story in various ways told to me in basically this way. And then, especially if the conference was in like Miami or Nashville, lots of people getting up and screaming and cheering, and lots of podcasters making their entire lives off of this story. It's a simple story for simple folk. But the reality is much more complicated. The reality is that maybe fiat never collapses. Or even if we have periods of hyperinflation, maybe fiat comes back. In fact, that is usually what happens. We've seen many, many countries go through periods of hyperinflation. Israel, Argentina, the United States, Germany, the UK, and they've come back. France had revolution after revolution, but it never went away. And war, we've been told, is going to be ended because it's going to just be too expensive. As the discipline of Bitcoin makes borrowing impossible, it's going to be impossible for governments to wage war. But war was waged before there were governments, and war will be waged after they're no longer here. But perhaps the most crucial way in which the story is too simple is we can see what's happening right now. Large institutions are adopting Bitcoin. there's a Bitcoin ETF. The same people who are super excited about the new period of prosperity and freedom and peace are also very excited about the number go up ETF. And we've got a bigger problem. Because even if all of those things happened, even if, as we, in our deepest hearts and minds desire, the apocalypse were to arrive, it doesn't mean that we would be masters of the world, because Bitcoin simply cannot scale to perform transactions that would allow all of us to be able to buy all of the things that we want to buy. Bitcoin just doesn't do the job. It can't. So, a few years ago, we created the Lightning Network, and that was supposed to solve the problem. And, now we have the benefit of hindsight, and we know that that hasn't solved the problem either. But the bigger issue is that there have always been two visions of what Bitcoin is and can be. Those two visions can basically be broken up into the simple and the comprehensive, and both of them were embraced by Satoshi, but not always by everyone else. The simple story of Bitcoin is that it's peer-to-peer electronic cash. And that is all it ever needs to be. And in fact, it's been simplified even further to be just an inert asset, to be digital gold. Okay. And the idea of the story that I told you at the beginning is that that's enough because, it's inevitable that that will just take over the world. But the more comprehensive story of Bitcoin, and if you think about it, sometimes the way I like to think about it is, Einstein had two theories of relativity, right? He had the special theory of relativity, which was extremely limited, and the general theory of relativity, which was more comprehensive. The more comprehensive story of Bitcoin is, I think, far more interesting and has also been with us from the very, very beginning. In Bitcoin version 0.1.0, there is the residue of the first dApp that was ever built on a blockchain. It was called Poker Lobby, and it was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. And in the initial version of Bitcoin, he was intending to embed not just BTC, the digital gold, but also the first decentralized application that could be part of an economy that uses this asset. Decentralized poker. And over the next few years, while Satoshi was still involved, there were many ideas like Namecoin and merge mining, and the idea that we can develop decentralized systems far beyond just BTC using, as Satoshi put it, the same CPU power. So the more comprehensive idea of what Bitcoin can be is that Bitcoin can be a platform with shared CPU power, a shared computing platform for decentralized systems, which effectively creates a decentralized economy around Bitcoin, and perhaps most importantly, allows us to interact through dApps, through the services in this economy, without intermediaries with Bitcoin, and allows us to scale Bitcoin in such a way that we no longer need to have trusted third-party intermediaries. Because if you look at where we are today with Bitcoin, you cannot do anything with it without going through trusted intermediaries. You want to buy something, you need to go through an exchange. You want to leverage it, you need to go through an ETF. You want to borrow against it, you're going to be probably going to some shady company which is going to go bankrupt in 6 months. We are surrounded in the Bitcoin economy with third parties who are security holes, these trusted intermediaries. And so what we've seen in the history of crypto, ever since, BitDNS and Namecoin, and afterwards Mastercoin and Colored Coins and Counterparty, what we've seen is that these two stories, the simple story and the comprehensive story, have basically broken up into two entirely different ecosystems. One we call Bitcoin, and the other one we call crypto. And crypto's not doing great, right? If you go onto Twitter today, you're going to basically read about two things. You're going to read about how Israel wiped out Hassan Nasrallah, and you're going to read about how Ethereum, its price is crashing in comparison to everything in the world, and Bitcoin is dead, and it's all over. But why is Ethereum suffering? Well, I've been a Bitcoin person for all of my years in this space, right? For now, I don't know, 14 or 15 years. But over the last few years, I've spent a lot of time going to the other side, the crypto world, like an explorer, with one of those helmets and a microscope. And what I've discovered has explained to me why Ethereum is suffering, why Solana is suffering, why crypto is still a small fraction of Bitcoin. And it's really simple. It's because the people who have built an economy of Ponzi-nomics and speculation and giant casino, right? Really walking in the, in the not in the footsteps, they following on in the spirit of Satoshi, who wanted to bring, poker lobby to Bitcoin. They've built this giant casino, but what they really want to do in the casino is win Bitcoin. And the reason they want to win Bitcoin is because they trust Bitcoin is going to be there for 10 years and 20 years and 50 years. Because Bitcoin doesn't change. Because the nice thing about the simple digital gold story is that Bitcoin is permaware, it is reliable, it is not going anywhere. Whereas Ethereum gets upgraded every 6 months, it changes. Every single time they want to add a new feature, they need to change the whole system. It's software. It's not permaware, it's software. And software, nobody trusts. So everyone wants Bitcoin, but everyone with Bitcoin is not able to do anything with it. The reason I'm super excited, and the reason I asked to come speak about this particular subject, is because we've just gone through a whole series of conversations, right? Sergio, Alexei, Citrea with Orkun, and now myself. We're all talking about the same thing. What we're talking about is the fact that the split, which seems to have existed for now 15 years in Bitcoin, the split between the simple story and the comprehensive story, the split that is morphed into the split between Bitcoin and crypto, it's coming to an end. And this is very, very good news. It's very good news for crypto, and it's even better news for Bitcoin, and it's the best news for the world because we're about to enter into a real period of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and freedom. A few months ago, for the first time ever, we verified ZK proofs on Bitcoin mainnet. And what that means, and what you guys, if you've been in the room for the last few talks, have probably come to realize that means is that we now have the ability to take any VM, any code, compile it down to Bitcoin in the form of a ZK proof, write it, verify it to Bitcoin, and that means that we can basically have any smart contract or any functionality that we want on Bitcoin permissionlessly. And so this tension that has existed between the simple but extremely limited story of Bitcoin and the comprehensive but incredibly unstable story of crypto, we're bringing them together. We're bringing the band back together. And we're doing it on Bitcoin. So Alexei, who was here a while ago, was talking about how he's working on building a system to allow all of these different chains that exist out there to bridge their, assets into Bitcoin. And Orkun is working on a Bitcoin rollup. And we at BitcoinOS, we're working on what we consider the OS part of it, the piece that will allow all of these different systems to compile down to Bitcoin and to be interoperable with each other. Secured by Bitcoin, utilizing the same shared CPU power, and interoperable with each other, so we're looking at one cohesive ecosystem for a cohesive story about Bitcoin. And that is an incredibly big deal. Just in terms of the use cases that we're currently seeing developers working on BitcoinOS to build, here are 4. And the possibilities are endless, but here are 4. 1, trustlessly or very, very near trustless bridging to other ecosystems. Replacing WBTC, replacing TBTC, and replacing perhaps all of these other assets as the primary reserve asset, not just in Bitcoin, but in all of these different crypto chains. 2, the ability to build rollups to Bitcoin, secured by Bitcoin, which allow us to do 2 things. 1, scale Bitcoin effectively, infinitely, with very, very few compromises on security. And 2, the ability then to add any rule set that we want to Bitcoin, secured by Bitcoin, but utilized only by the people who opt into it. Right? So a hierarchical set of rules where you have Bitcoin consensus rules, and then on top of that, you can build more selective rule sets. Extremely powerful, effectively Turing complete powerful, right? 3rd thing, programmable tokens on Bitcoin. So, I said there were 2 ways of thinking about the Bitcoin chain, right? One is the simple, like the special theory of relativity is it's only for BTC. A more general way of thinking about it is that it is the best system ever devised for managing property rights. And we can now apply this more generally to various other kinds of properties. For the last 4 years, I've been working on a project called Sovryn. Sovryn is a company. It makes a lot of money. It has tens of thousands of users, has done billions of dollars in trades, pays people a dividend in BTC every single year, which is typically on the order of, depending on the year, between 7 and 19% annualized yield paid out in BTC, just from the trading and lending fees that Sovryn makes. And Sovryn is a company registered nowhere except for the blockchain. This is how you build an economy around an asset, how you take something like BTC and you turn it into a currency by building an economy native to it. Not only that, one of the challenges, the biggest challenges with the story of how we are inevitably going to move from store of value to medium of exchange requires that volatility go down. And I can promise you that volatility in Bitcoin is not going down anytime soon. Not for decades, maybe not ever. Because Bitcoin has this great thing where you can't make more of it. And so its price, in comparison to other things, is subject purely to supply and demand. And that, as anyone who's been in crypto or Bitcoin for any period of time knows, people get a bit over-optimistic and a bit, over-pessimistic violently. Greed, right, and fear are violent emotions which make the price go up and down. That's not going anywhere. In fact, we can look at examples in the past. Gold and oil today, they are, used by everything, and yet they're extremely volatile, despite the fact that OPEC has been trying to control their price, which no one can do with Bitcoin. So commodity assets are always volatile. So one of the things that we've done with Sovryn is we've built Bitcoin-backed stablecoins. They're not trustless, though, because we don't yet have trustless systems built on Bitcoin. But this is a way that we can introduce low volatility assets built on Bitcoin for a true Bitcoin economy. Assets, dollars, if you will, backed instead of by gold, by Bitcoin. So programmable tokens is a huge deal. And perhaps the most important one, to me at least, is the ability to build native privacy into Bitcoin transactions or build it into the rollups, the scalable execution environments, so that thousands of people, perhaps billions of people, can transact as part of a huge anonymity set and obscure the data that they're leaking to the world about their basic financial activity, which is something we absolutely need if we're going to utilize and trust Bitcoin as the primary way in which we act, in which we behave, in which we operate in the world. Now, the big deal right now is that this technology, right? So with BitSnark, we've already verified arbitrary computation on Bitcoin. We're now in the process of decentralizing it. A few days ago, we open sourced the first part of it. This is not something that we're talking about that is going to happen. This is already here, and now we're in the hard bit of making it useful. But that is going to be happening over the next months. Next year, we're going to start seeing the first rollups. We're going to start seeing the first privacy systems. We're going to start seeing the first scalability systems built on this. So Bitcoin is about to change. Bitcoin is going to make this question of should I use BTC, which doesn't do very much but is stable, is permaware, or should I use crypto, an obsolete question. Everything's going to get built on Bitcoin because we can. And because people will build on Bitcoin because it is the only system we have which actually makes sense for building anything. So coming back to the question that I asked, the mystery of why Ethereum and Solana, even though they can do so much more than Bitcoin, have never come close to taking over it. Those people themselves prefer Bitcoin as a long-term holding. And the fact of the matter is that despite what people, 20 and 30-year-old young men in basements hopped up on Red Bull and podcasts will tell you, most of finance, 99% of real financial activity and finance has nothing to do with payments or trade or speculation or casino. It has to do with wealth preservation. And that's true for individuals, whether it's savings accounts or pensions, mortgages or inheritance, and institutions, whether it's 30-year bonds, corporate bonds, large infrastructure projects which pay themselves out over 50 years, large M&A projects. All of these things have multi-decade time horizons. And the only system that we've built in code that has reliability for multi-decades is the permaware of Bitcoin. And that is why we're never going to see real-world assets, and we're never going to see anything outside of speculation on any of these other chains, because they're built to be ephemeral, or perhaps you could say ethereal, right? They're just not built to last, their software. And so we've been self-limiting as builders, as users, and as an industry, limiting ourselves to either hodling or speculation because we haven't built tools that are capable of managing financial assets, creating new financial assets, and generating new rule sets around them on a system which is reliable for 10, 20, 50, and 100 years. But now we have one. It's called Bitcoin. It was always going to be Bitcoin, and it's becoming a reality now. I have never thought that Bitcoin is inevitable. I've always thought that that was an extremely silly thing to say. Nothing in human affairs and in the chaos of the universe is inevitable. Bitcoin and where it ends up is entirely dependent on our ability to create a free market, create the right incentives. No one understood that better than Satoshi. And unleash the innovative energy and potential of developers. Well, we're doing that now with Bitcoin. And so now, I think we can actually say with seriousness that we have the opportunity, although not the inevitability, but we have the reality that we can now build truly a period of unprecedented peace, freedom, and prosperity. And it's going to be built on Bitcoin. Thank you. I don't know if anyone will have questions after that, although maybe somebody misunderstood and will want to ask me what the link to my podcast is. But if anyone does, I'm happy to take them. We've got a couple more minutes.